Hello and welcome to Chapter 16 Energy, Video 1. Before we begin, just a quick reminder that you should have your course book with you and be ready to fill in the blanks as you watch this video. Okay, so now we are ready to begin. By the end of this Video 1, you will be able to state what is potential energy, and you should also be able to state what the different forms of potential energy are. Before we talk about potential energy, let's just remind ourselves about why we learn about energy. Okay, energy is actually something that's essential for our daily lives. Okay, for example, at this rock concert, you find that many different forms of energy are being used. For example, sound, heat, and light. And we would not be able to have our rock concert if power stations did not exist. In other words, power stations generate electrical energy, which are then converted to the different forms at this rock concert. And of course, not just the rock concert, but at many other aspects of our lives. In other words, if we did not have energy, we would not be able to live at all. So this chapter about energy will help you appreciate the importance of energy in our daily lives, if you already do not. Okay, so now we are ready to begin about potential energy. Okay, what is energy? Okay, so energy is the ability to do work or the ability to move or to cause changes in matter. So what do we mean by changes in matter? Okay, so let's just use a mobile phone as an example. So we know that a battery provides the energy to power up your mobile phone. So once you switch on your mobile phone, you find that the energy from the battery transforms your mobile phone from a blank screen to a screen that can give off light as well as sound. Okay, so that you are able to use the phone as you intend it to. So that is how energy can cause a change in your mobile phone, and energy, of course, comes from the battery. Okay, so one of the objectives of this video is to talk about what potential energy is. So potential energy is stored energy. Of course, there are three kinds of potential energy: gravitational potential energy, which is discussed in video 2. Elastic potential energy, and chemical potential energy. Okay, so let us begin with elastic potential energy. Okay, so elastic potential energy, how do we actually cause elastic potential energy to happen? So what we do is we take a spring and pull it with your hands. Okay, so let's have a demonstration. Okay, so I have a spring here and I pull it with my hands. Okay, my hands apply a force on the spring and so it gets longer. Okay, and of course, what I'm feeling now is that the spring wants to pull my hand backwards. Yeah, so that means that the spring has some energy inside which actually wants to do something to my hands. Okay, and that stored energy in the spring is called elastic potential energy. So once I let go the spring, okay, you find that it moves back, yeah? So the stored energy in the spring is now transformed into the movement of the spring, which you will know, which most of you may know is called kinetic energy, okay? Right, so just now my hands applied a force to the spring so that it got longer, and that caused some elastic potential energy to be stored inside the spring. Then once I let go the spring, then the spring moves, and so the stored elastic potential energy is then converted to motion or kinetic energy. And of course, there's one very common application of the energy in the spring is to enable the baby lying in a cot to rock gently. Okay, so what you do is put the baby in a cot and then pull down the spring slightly and then let go, and you find that the baby starts moving. Yeah, so that tells us that the elastic potential energy in the spring is now converted into the kinetic energy of the baby sleeping in the cot. Okay, another example of elastic potential energy is compressed air. So how do we have compressed air in elastic potential energy? Okay, so let's have another demonstration. So what we actually do is we take a syringe, cover the opening with my hands and push the plunger. Okay, so I'm going to show it to you now. Okay, so I've got a syringe. Okay, and there's air inside the syringe now in this empty portion here. So I'm now going to compress the air inside. And guess what I'm feeling now? It's as though the plunger wants to spring out by itself, right? Yeah, so same thing, by compressing the air, I'm actually storing energy in the air, and that is known as also the elastic potential energy. Okay, and what's going to happen to the plunger when I let go? Okay, the plunger is going to move, right? So let me let go. Yeah, so there we go. So that means that the stored energy in the compressed air has now been transformed into the motion of the plunger, and hence it has been converted to kinetic energy. Okay, so same thing. So with covering the syringe and pushing the plunger, so it causes elastic potential energy to be stored in the air. And what happened? Okay, the force applied to compress the air actually caused energy to be stored inside the air. Okay, and once I let go, okay, the stored energy inside the compressed air is now converted to motion, which the same thing some of you may know to be called kinetic energy. Okay, so of course, one very common example of the application of compressed air to store elastic potential energy is the super soaker. Okay, so over here the green portion is where the compressed air is stored. Okay, and then once you pull the trigger, the compressed air is released, and the compressed air, the elastic potential energy stored in the compressed air is then transformed into the kinetic energy of the water. And then of course all of you will know that the super soaker has gives off a very fast jet of water. Yeah, so that tells you how much energy is stored in the compressed air such that the water can travel very fast. Okay, right. And the second kind of potential energy that we store inside here is called chemical potential energy. Now, chemical potential energy is it's actually a potential energy due to the atoms and molecules in matter. Okay, for example, you know that a battery has some chemicals inside, and when they are connected to an electrical circuit, they provide electrical energy. Okay, and of course, some of you who have studied chemistry will know that this electricity is due to the movement of ions inside the battery. Okay, energy can also be stored in this thing called solid fuel. So solid fuel is just a special type of chemical such that when burnt, you actually get a lot of thermal energy and light, and it can last for a long time. Okay, again, and this energy is again due to the atoms and molecules inside the solid fuel. And of course, one very common example of chemical potential energy is the food that we eat every day. Yep, so the atoms and molecules in your food, okay, are digested by the body and then converted to other forms of energy for your daily needs. For example, you need to walk up the stairs, you need to move your arms around, and so on. And of course, also the thermal energy because your body is warm. Okay? Right, so now we've discussed elastic potential energy and chemical potential energy. So let us just summarize it in paragraph 2. Okay, so elastic potential energy is due to the compressing or stretching. Okay, so for example, we talked about the compressing of air, so compressed air, yeah, and that one application of this is in a super soaker. Or it can also be due to stretching. Of course, we just now stretched the spring, okay, that enabled the baby to move up and down. Okay, chemical potential energy is the potential energy due to atoms or molecules. Of course, we saw several examples. One of it is battery, the other one is food. And of course, I'm sure some of you will be familiar with gravitational potential energy, and this is the potential energy due to height. Okay, and of course, let us remind ourselves what potential energy is. Okay, potential energy is stored energy because, as we saw in the elastic potential energy and chemical energy, once you had the stored energy in these scenarios, all this could be converted to other forms of energy. Okay, so this is the end of video 1.